A young man abandoned his 81-year-old priest uncle in a nursing home to steal his life savings. But what the priest did when he got free will restore your faith in humanity. Before I tell you this true story from Ireland where betrayal transformed into the most beautiful redemption, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you believe that forgiveness can change lives, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what this priest did after being imprisoned for 6 months will make you believe in second chances, for everyone. Father Thomas O'Brien, 81 years old, sat in the passenger seat of his nephew's car, watching the Irish countryside roll by. The green hills, the stone walls, the sheep dotting the fields, it was all so familiar, yet today it felt different. Ominous. Where exactly are we going, Liam? Father Thomas asked for the third time, his Irish accent still strong despite decades as a priest. You said something about a retreat, but this seems quite far from town. It's a surprise, Uncle Tom, Liam O'Brien replied, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. A place where you can rest. You've been working so hard at the parish. Father Thomas nodded, though something in his nephew's tone made him uneasy. At 81, he'd been a priest for 56 years, serving the small parish of Ballycastle in County Cork, Ireland. He'd baptized Liam, confirmed him, officiated at his wedding, and now Liam, 34 years old, was taking him somewhere remote. For reasons Father Thomas was beginning to suspect were not entirely charitable. Father Thomas had no illusions about himself. He was old. His arthritis made it difficult to stand for long masses. His memory was starting to fade, not dementia, the doctors said, just normal aging. He'd recently forgotten a couple's names at their wedding rehearsal. He sometimes repeated stories in his sermons. The parish council had been patient, but he'd overheard conversations. Perhaps it's time for Father Tom to retire. Let a younger priest take over. Retirement. The word terrified him. What was a priest without a parish? Where would he go? The church provided a small cottage on the parish grounds, but that would go to his successor. And his only family was Liam, his late sister's son. 2 months ago, Liam had approached him with a proposition. Uncle Tom, I've been thinking. You're getting older. You need care. Why don't you come live with me and Sarah? Father Thomas had been touched. That's very kind, Liam, but I don't want to be a burden. You wouldn't be. We have the space. And honestly, Liam had looked uncomfortable. We could use help with the mortgage. If you could contribute, from your savings and pension. Ah, there it was. Father Thomas had been frugal his entire life. Priests didn't earn much, but he'd saved diligently. He owned a small property in Dublin that he rented out, an inheritance from his parents. Combined with his pension and savings, he had approximately €240,000 in assets. Not a fortune, but substantial for an elderly priest. Let me think about it, Father Thomas had said. But over the following weeks, Liam had become increasingly insistent. And Father Thomas had noticed something troubling. Liam was in financial trouble. His business, a small construction company, was failing. He'd taken out loans he couldn't repay. His house was facing foreclosure. And he saw his elderly uncle as a solution. Now, driving deeper into the countryside, Father Thomas finally understood what was happening. Liam, where are we really going? Liam's jaw tightened. To a place where you'll be taken care of. What kind of place? Uncle Tom, you can't take care of yourself anymore. You're forgetting things. You can barely walk. You need professional care. You're taking me to a nursing home? Without discussing it with me. It's what's best. Liam, pull over. Take me back to the parish right now. I can't do that. Why not? Because I already signed the papers. You're checked into St. Brigid's care facility. It's all arranged. Father Thomas felt cold dread. How did you sign papers for me? Liam didn't answer, which was answer enough. Forgery. Or coercion. Or power of attorney documents Father Thomas didn't remember signing during one of his more confused moments. And my assets will be used to pay for your care. It's expensive, Uncle Tom. 4,000 euros a month. For how long? As long as necessary. Which meant, until the money ran out. Father Thomas did the math quickly. 240,000 euros at 4,000 euros a month was 60 months. 5 years. By which time he'd likely be dead, and Liam would be, what? Executor of an empty estate? You're stealing from me, Father Thomas said quietly. I'm making sure you're cared for. You can't stay in that cottage alone. The church is pushing you out anyway. So you've decided my future without consulting me? Because you're not capable of making these decisions anymore. They drove in tense silence for another 20 minutes. Finally, they reached a large, gray building surrounded by high fences. St. Brigid's Care Facility. It looked more like a prison than a home. I won't get out of the car, Father Thomas said. Uncle Tom, please don't make this harder. I won't. You're going to have to drag an 81-year-old priest out of this car by force. Is that what you want? Liam's face flushed. Why are you being so difficult? Because you're betraying me, Liam. You're stealing my independence, my dignity, and my life savings, and you're pretending it's for my benefit. It is for your benefit. Then why didn't you discuss it with me? Why the deception? Liam had no answer. After a long standoff, the facility staff came out. 2 orderlies and a nurse. They were professional but firm. Father O'Brien? I'm Nurse McCarthy. We've been expecting you. Let's get you settled. I don't want to be here, Father Thomas said clearly. I'm being brought here against my will. Nurse McCarthy looked uncomfortable. She glanced at Liam, who handed her documents. These are signed admission papers and power of attorney, Liam said. My uncle has diminished capacity. He needs 24-hour care. I do not have diminished capacity, Father Thomas protested. I'm 81 years old with arthritis, not incompetent. But the documents were official-looking, and elderly people protesting their admission was, sadly, common. The staff had seen it before. They helped, essentially forced, Father Thomas out of the car and into a wheelchair. Liam, please, Father Thomas said, one last appeal. Don't do this. We can work something else out. But Liam was already backing away, guilt and determination warring on his face. It's what's best, Uncle Tom. You'll see. In time, you'll understand. He got in his car and drove away. Father Thomas sat in the wheelchair, watching his nephew disappear, and felt something he hadn't felt in decades of priesthood, utter despair. He'd devoted his life to serving God and community. He'd counseled thousands, performed countless baptisms and funerals, been a pillar of his parish. And now, at 81, he'd been abandoned at a care facility by the nephew he'd helped raise. As they wheeled him inside, Father Thomas thought of Jesus' words, "I was a stranger, and you welcomed me not." He'd never felt more like a stranger in his own life. Inside St. Brigid's, Father Thomas was processed like a piece of luggage. His belongings were inventoried: one suitcase of clothes, his Bible, his rosary, a photo of his late sister, Liam's mother. "That's all I have?" he asked the intake nurse. "That's what your nephew brought." His entire life reduced to one suitcase. They assigned him to a shared room. He'd be splitting it with another elderly man who sat silently by the window, staring at nothing. The room was clean but institutional. 2 narrow beds, 2 small dressers, 1 shared bathroom. The window looked out at the parking lot. "Dinner is at 5 p.m., the nurse explained. "Medication rounds at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Activities in the common room daily. Any questions?" "Yes." "How do I leave?" "Well, Father, this is your home now. If you want to leave, you'd need to arrange alternative housing and care. And your nephew would need to agree since he has your power of attorney." "I never gave him power of attorney." "According to our records, you did. 2 months ago." Father Thomas remembered Liam visiting with some papers for the parish. He'd been tired, had signed without reading carefully. Had that been it? "Can I contest it?" "You'd need a lawyer, Father. And you'd need to prove you have capacity to make your own decisions." "I do have capacity." "Then you'll need to demonstrate that through legal channels. But for now, this is where you are." Father Thomas sat on his narrow bed, holding his rosary, and prayed. But for the first time in his life, the prayers felt hollow. He was trapped. His nephew had stolen his freedom and his assets. And no one was coming to help. Or so he thought. Because Father Thomas O'Brien had spent 56 years serving others. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the universe keeps track. And payment was coming due. In ways Liam O'Brien could never have imagined. The first week at St. Brigid's care facility was hell for Father Thomas. The routine was rigid: wake at 6 a.m., breakfast at 7, medications at 8, activities at 10, which consisted of sitting in a circle while a cheerful young woman led them in children's songs, lunch at noon, more sitting, dinner at 5, more medications at 8, lights out at 9 p.m. It was a schedule designed for people with severe dementia or complete physical incapacity. Father Thomas had neither. "I'm not singing 'The Wheels on the Bus,'" he told the activities coordinator. "I'm 81, not 5. Father O'Brien, these activities are designed to keep residents engaged. I've been engaged for 56 years as a priest. I think I can manage to engage myself." He was labeled difficult within 3 days. But Father Thomas didn't care. He'd spent decades caring for others. Now he needed to care for himself. Specifically, he needed to get out of here. His roommate was a man named Seamus Murphy, 78, who'd had a severe stroke 2 years ago. Seamus couldn't speak coherently anymore, but his eyes were alert. Aware. Father Thomas started talking to him, even though Seamus couldn't respond verbally. "I'm Father Thomas. I've been dumped here by my nephew who wants my money. How about you? What's your story?" Seamus made a sound, somewhere between a grunt and a word. But his eyes were sad. Over days, Father Thomas pieced together Seamus's story from nurses' comments and scattered words. Seamus had been a farmer. After his stroke, his son had put him here. Hadn't visited in 8 months. "We're in the same boat, Seamus," Father Thomas said. "Abandoned by family who found us inconvenient." Seamus made a sound that might have been agreement. Father Thomas began observing St. Brigid's carefully. What he found disturbed him. The facility wasn't abusive, the staff weren't cruel. But it was negligent. Understaffed. Corners cut everywhere. Residents sat for hours in soiled clothing because there weren't enough staff to change them promptly. Medications were administered hastily, sometimes the wrong doses. The food was institutional slop. The activities were infantilizing. And many of the residents, Father Thomas realized, were like him. Not severely impaired, just old and inconvenient to their families. Mrs. Delaney, 79, had been put here by her daughter who wanted to sell her house. She was perfectly lucid but had no way to leave. Mr. Fitzgerald, 82, had mild dementia but could still read, hold conversations, and manage his own care. His son had placed him here to avoid having to care for him. "This isn't a care facility," Father Thomas told Seamus one night. "It's a warehouse for unwanted old people." Seamus grunted in agreement. Father Thomas tried calling the diocese. Surely his bishop would help? But when he finally reached the bishop's office, the secretary was sympathetic but unhelpful. "Father O'Brien, we heard you'd retired to a care facility. The parish has already assigned a new priest." "I didn't retire. I was placed here against my will." "That's a family matter, Father. The church can't intervene in private family arrangements." "But I've served for 56 years. And we're grateful for your service. But you're 81 now. Perhaps it's time to rest." They'd moved on. He was already forgotten. Father Thomas tried calling a lawyer. But his phone privileges were limited, 15 minutes per day on a shared phone. And when he finally reached a lawyer's office, the consultation fee alone was €200, which he didn't have access to because Liam controlled his accounts. He was trapped. Systematically, thoroughly trapped. But Father Thomas O'Brien hadn't been a priest for 56 years without learning some things about human nature and quiet resistance. He started small, organizing prayer groups for residents who were religious. Then book clubs for those who could still read. Then simply sitting with those who were lonely and forgotten. "What are you doing, Father?" Nurse McCarthy asked, watching him lead a small group in evening prayers. "My job," Father Thomas replied. "Caring for souls. Just because I'm here doesn't mean I stop being a priest." The staff didn't stop him, it kept residents calm and occupied. And gradually, something shifted. Father Thomas became a leader among the residents. They came to him with problems. With fears. With stories. And Father Thomas listened. Really listened. Mrs. Delaney told him about her daughter who'd forged documents to take her house. "I signed papers I didn't understand. Now she's sold my home and I've nowhere to go even if I could leave here." Mr. Fitzgerald told him about his son who visited once a year on Christmas, stayed 20 minutes, and left. "I raised him alone after his mother died. And this is what I get." The stories were all variations on the same theme: elderly parents betrayed by children who saw them as burdens or opportunities for financial gain. "This is an epidemic," Father Thomas told Seamus one night. "Elder abuse. Financial exploitation. And it's happening in plain sight. 3 months into his stay, Father Thomas had a visitor. Father Michael Doherty, 42, the young priest who'd taken over his parish. "Father Tom," Father Michael said warmly, "I've been meaning to visit. How are you settling in?" "I'm imprisoned here," Father Thomas said bluntly. "My nephew forged documents, stole my assets, and put me here against my will." Father Michael looked uncomfortable. "I heard there were family complications. But surely if the documents are legal." "Legal doesn't mean right. You know that. What do you want me to do, Father Tom? Help me get out. Talk to the bishop. Testify that I'm mentally competent. Something." Father Michael hesitated. "Father Tom, I saw you forget that couple's names at their wedding rehearsal. I heard you repeat the same story 3 times in one sermon. The parish council had concerns." "I'm 81. I forget names sometimes. That doesn't make me incompetent." "No, but, Father Tom, maybe this is for the best. You've served faithfully for decades. Maybe it's time to rest and let younger men take over." "Is that what the church teaches? That once you're old and imperfect, you're disposable?" Father Michael had no answer. He left after 30 minutes, promising to pray for you. Prayers. Everyone offered prayers. No one offered actual help. But Father Thomas wasn't giving up. He began documenting everything in a small notebook he'd found. Names of residents who'd been exploited, details of negligent care, financial irregularities he'd noticed. "What are you doing?" Seamus managed to ask one day, his stroke-affected speech barely comprehensible. "Building a case," Father Thomas replied. "If I can't get out, maybe I can at least expose what's happening here. Protect the others." It was a long shot, but it was something. What Father Thomas didn't know was that his quiet resistance was about to intersect with someone unexpected. Someone who would change everything. Because sometimes, the people we help in small ways remember us in big ways. And payment was coming due for 56 years of faithful service. 6 months into Father Thomas's imprisonment at St. Brigid's, a new volunteer arrived at the facility. Her name was Royson Walsh, 28 years old, a journalist for the Cork Independent. She was doing a human interest piece on volunteering with the elderly, a feel-good story for the Sunday edition. She'd been assigned to St. Brigid's for 1 afternoon per week for 4 weeks. Her editor expected heartwarming stories about kind volunteers helping grateful seniors. What she found was something entirely different. Royson's first day, she was paired with Father Thomas for conversation practice. "Father O'Brien, this is Royson. She'll be spending time with you today," Nurse McCarthy said. "Hello, Father," Royson said with professional cheerfulness. "I'm here to chat, maybe play cards, whatever you'd like." Father Thomas studied her with sharp eyes. "You're a journalist." Royson blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" "You have that look. Observant. Taking mental notes of everything. And you have a notebook tucked in your bag. I can see the corner. What are you really doing here?" Royson laughed. "You're very perceptive. Yes, I'm writing a piece about volunteering. Human interest story. How boring for you." "Excuse me. Human interest stories about volunteering are dull. Young person helps old people, everyone feels good. Where's the story in that?" Royson sat down, intrigued. "What would make it interesting?" The truth. That places like this are dumping grounds for inconvenient elderly. That financial elder abuse is rampant. That families exploit vulnerable parents and face no consequences. That's quite an accusation. It's quite a reality. Want to hear my story? And Father Thomas told her everything. Liam's financial troubles. The forged power of attorney. The forced admission. The theft of his assets. Can you prove any of this? Royson asked, her journalistic instincts activated. I have documentation. Names. Dates. And I'm not the only one. There are a dozen residents here with similar stories. Royson's piece about heartwarming volunteers was forgotten. This was a real story. Over the next 4 weeks, Royson interviewed Father Thomas extensively. She also talked to other residents, Mrs. Delaney, Mr. Fitzgerald, others who'd been financially exploited by family. She investigated Father Thomas's claims, pulled property records showing Liam had sold Father Thomas's Dublin rental property without proper authorization, found the suspicious power of attorney documents, interviewed the lawyer who'd handled the sale, who admitted he'd had concerns about the signature but processed it anyway. This is elder abuse, Royson told her editor. Financial exploitation on a massive scale. And it's legal because the system has no safeguards. Can you prove Father O'Brien is mentally competent? That's the key to the story. I've spoken with him for hours. He's sharp, articulate, knowledgeable. I'll get him independently evaluated. Royson arranged for a geriatric psychiatrist to evaluate Father Thomas. The doctor's conclusion was clear. Father O'Brien has normal age-related memory decline but is fully capable of making his own decisions and managing his affairs. There is no justification for the power of attorney arrangement. Armed with evidence, Royson wrote her story. The article ran on the front page of the Cork Independent's Sunday edition. The priest who was stolen, how one nephew's greed trapped a beloved father in care facility. The story detailed Father Thomas's 56 years of service, Liam's financial troubles, the forged documents, the forced admission, and the theft of assets. It included interviews with parishioners who remembered Father Thomas fondly and were shocked by his treatment. But it didn't stop there. The story expanded to include other residents at St. Brigid's with similar experiences, revealing a pattern of elder financial abuse across Ireland. These are people who spent their lives caring for their children, Royson wrote. Now, in their most vulnerable years, those same children see them as financial resources to be exploited. And the system offers virtually no protection. The response was immediate and explosive. Within 24 hours, the story was picked up by national media. RT, Irish Public Broadcasting, did a feature. Social media exploded with outrage. Liam O'Brien became public enemy number 1. His construction business, already failing, lost its remaining contracts. Protesters gathered outside his house. He received death threats. I was just trying to help my uncle, he told reporters who cornered him outside his home. He needed care. By stealing his property and his freedom. A reporter shot back. Liam had no good answer. The Gardaí, Irish police, opened an investigation into financial elder abuse. The solicitor who'd processed the property sale without proper verification faced professional sanctions. And the Catholic Diocese of Cork, embarrassed by the revelation that they'd abandoned a priest after 56 years of service, issued a statement. We deeply regret the circumstances Father O'Brien has faced. We are reviewing our policies for supporting retired clergy. But the most significant response came from an unexpected source. Margaret Walsh, 76, a wealthy widow from Dublin, had been following the story. She'd grown up in Ballycastle and remembered Father Thomas from her childhood. He'd officiated at her first communion. She called the Cork Independent and asked to be connected with Royson. "I read your story about Father O'Brien," Margaret said. "That man baptized me, confirmed me, married me and my late husband. He's a saint. And I want to help." "How?" "I'm contacting my solicitor today. We're going to challenge Liam O'Brien's power of attorney and get Father Thomas released from that facility. And I'm prepared to fund whatever legal action is necessary." "Mrs. Walsh, that could be expensive. I have more money than I need and no children to leave it to. What better use than helping a man who spent his life helping others?" Within 2 weeks, Margaret's legal team had filed motions in court. The hearing was set for March 15. Liam would have to defend his power of attorney and prove Father Thomas was incompetent to manage his affairs. Father Thomas was transported to the courthouse, his first time leaving St. Brigid's in 6 months. Royson met him at the entrance. "How do you feel, Father?" "Like David facing Goliath," Father Thomas replied. "Except I'm 81 and need a walker." In the courtroom, Father Thomas sat with Margaret's legal team. Across the aisle, Liam sat with his lawyer, looking miserable. The judge, a woman in her 50s named Judge Brennan, reviewed the case materials. "Mr. O'Brien," she addressed Liam, "you claim your uncle is mentally incompetent and requires institutional care. Yet the independent psychiatric evaluation states clearly that he has capacity. How do you explain this discrepancy?" Liam's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, at the time the power of attorney was executed, Father O'Brien was showing signs of cognitive decline." "I was tired," Father Thomas interjected. "I just finished a funeral and 3 hospital visits. I signed papers my nephew told me were routine parish business." "Father O'Brien," Judge Brennan said, "did you understand what you were signing?" "No, Your Honor. I was told they were routine documents. If I'd known Liam was giving himself control over my finances and person, I would never have signed." "That's fraud," Margaret's lawyer stated. "Clear fraud." The hearing continued for 2 hours. Medical experts testified. Parishioners testified to Father Thomas's mental acuity. Royson testified about her extensive interviews with him. Finally, Judge Brennan delivered her ruling. "I find that the power of attorney was obtained through deception and misrepresentation. Father Thomas O'Brien has demonstrated clear mental capacity. Therefore, I am voiding the power of attorney, ordering Father O'Brien's immediate release from St. Brigid's, and requiring Liam O'Brien to provide a full accounting of all assets he's managed on his uncle's behalf." The courtroom erupted in applause. Father Thomas closed his eyes and said a quiet prayer of thanksgiving. But Judge Brennan wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the Gardaí for investigation of potential elder abuse and financial exploitation. Mr. O'Brien, you may face criminal charges." Liam's face went white. As Father Thomas was wheeled out of the courtroom, Liam approached. "Uncle Tom, I don't," Father Thomas said quietly. "Not here. Not now." Liam stood there, watching his uncle leave, realizing fully what he'd lost. Not just the money, but his uncle's love and trust. His reputation. Possibly his freedom. Father Thomas moved into a small assisted living apartment, not St. Bridget's, but a real home where he had independence and dignity. Margaret Walsh had arranged and paid for it. "Why are you doing this?" Father Thomas asked her. "Because 60 years ago, when my father died, you sat with my mother every day for a month. You helped us through the worst time of our lives. You don't remember, you've helped so many people. But I remember. And now, it's my turn to help you." Father Thomas had no memory of it. But that was the thing about a life of service. You plant seeds everywhere, never knowing which ones will grow. Royson's article won the National Journalism Award for investigative reporting. But more importantly, it sparked a national conversation about elder abuse in Ireland. The government passed new legislation, Father Tom's Law, requiring independent verification of any power of attorney involving a person over 75, and creating stronger penalties for financial exploitation of the elderly. St. Bridget's Care Facility was investigated and cited for numerous violations. It was eventually shut down, and residents were relocated to better facilities. And Father Thomas, free once more, returned to what he did best: caring for others. But this time, the caring was for himself too. Because he'd learned that accepting help wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. Father Thomas settled into his assisted living apartment with a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in 6 months. It was small but comfortable: 1 bedroom, a sitting area, a kitchenette. Large windows overlooking a garden. Most importantly, it was his. He could come and go as he pleased. Eat when he wanted. Pray on his own schedule. Read his books. Have visitors. It was heaven after St. Bridget's. But freedom brought new questions. What now? He was 81, newly freed, but still without a parish. The church had moved on. His cottage was occupied by Father Michael. He was, technically, retired. "What does an 81-year-old retired priest do?" he asked Margaret Walsh over tea one afternoon. "Whatever brings him joy," Margaret replied. "You've spent 56 years serving others. Maybe now you serve yourself." "I've never been very good at that." "Then learn." But serving others was in Father Thomas's DNA. Within weeks, he'd started visiting nursing homes, not as a resident, but as a volunteer chaplain. "I know what it's like to be forgotten in one of these places," he told the residents at Sacred Heart Nursing Home. "I'm here to make sure none of you are forgotten." He said masses for those who wanted them, heard confessions, sat with the lonely, advocated for those who couldn't advocate for themselves. And he became particularly focused on one mission: protecting elderly people from the kind of exploitation he'd experienced. Working with Royson, who'd become a friend, Father Thomas started a support group, Elder Advocacy Ireland. It provided free legal consultations for elderly people who suspected family members were exploiting them financially. "You're building something," Royson observed at one meeting. "Something that'll outlast you." "That's the point," Father Thomas said. "I can't undo what Liam did to me. But I can make sure it doesn't happen to others." Speaking of Liam, his life had imploded completely. The Gardaí had charged him with financial exploitation and fraud. His case was pending trial, with potential prison time of up to 5 years. His wife Sarah had left him, taking their 2 children. "I can't be married to someone who'd steal from his own uncle," she'd told the divorce mediator. His construction business was bankrupt. He'd lost his house. He was living in a small flat, working odd jobs, facing social ostracism everywhere he went. People in Ballycastle, the small town where Father Thomas had served for decades, refused to do business with Liam. He'd become a pariah. That's what you get for betraying Father Tom, people would say. 8 months after Father Thomas's release, Liam showed up at his assisted living apartment. The front desk called up. "Father O'Brien, you have a visitor." Liam O'Brien. "Should I send him away?" Father Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then, "No. Send him up." Liam knocked tentatively. Father Thomas opened the door. Liam looked terrible, thinner, unshaven, wearing clothes that had seen better days. His eyes were haunted. "Uncle Tom, I don't even know if you'll talk to me. You're here, aren't you? Come in." Liam entered the small apartment, looking around. "This is nice. Much better than where I put you." They sat in awkward silence. "Why are you here, Liam?" Father Thomas asked gently. "To apologize. I know it's too late. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But I need to say it. I'm sorry, Uncle Tom. I'm so sorry." "What exactly are you sorry for?" "For everything. For betraying you. For stealing from you. For putting you in that place. For thinking of you as a problem to be solved instead of as a person, as family, who deserved respect and dignity. Why did you do it?" Liam's face crumpled. "Because I was desperate. The business was failing. I was going to lose everything. And I looked at you, at your savings, your property, and I thought, he's old. He doesn't need all that. I need it more. I convinced myself I was helping you, but I was really just helping myself." "You were," Father Thomas agreed. "You weren't thinking about what was best for me. You were thinking about what was easiest for you." "I know. And I've lost everything because of it. My business. My wife. My kids barely talk to me. I'm probably going to prison. And I deserve all of it. Perhaps. But the worst part," Liam continued, tears streaming down his face, "is that I lost you. You were the closest thing to a father I ever had after my dad died. And I threw that away for money I don't even have anymore." Father Thomas was quiet for a long time. "What do you want from me, Liam?" "I don't know. Forgiveness. But I don't deserve it. Absolution. But I can't undo what I did. Maybe I just needed you to know that I understand what I did was evil. And that I'm sorry. Are you seeking redemption?" "I don't even know what that would look like." "Redemption," Father Thomas said, "isn't about undoing the past. It's about what you do with your future. You can't give me back the 6 months you stole. You can't erase the fear and humiliation I felt. But you can choose to be different going forward." "How?" "By helping instead of exploiting. By protecting instead of betraying. By using your experience, your failure, to help others avoid making the same mistakes." "I don't know how to do that." "Neither did I when I started. But Liam, I've learned something in 81 years. People can change. Not easily. Not quickly. But they can. If they're willing to do the work." Father Thomas did something unexpected. He offered Liam a deal. "I'm not pressing charges," Father Thomas said. "What?" "I'm asking the Gardaí to drop the criminal charges. On one condition: you work with Elder Advocacy Ireland. You share your story, the full, ugly truth, with other families who are facing financial pressure. You help people understand how easy it is to rationalize betraying your own family. You do that? After everything? I'm a priest, Liam. Forgiveness is my job. But forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences. It means consequences that lead to redemption rather than just punishment. Uncle Tom, there's more. You're going to return every penny you took from me. I don't care if it takes you 20 years. You'll pay it back. I will. I promise. And Liam, you'll go to therapy. Real therapy. To understand why you made the choices you made. Because if you don't address the root cause, you'll just hurt someone else eventually. I'll do all of it. Anything. Father Thomas extended his hand. Then we have an understanding. Liam shook his hand, crying. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve. None of us deserve the chances we get. But we accept them anyway and try to be worthy of them. Over the following year, Liam did the work. He spoke at Elder Advocacy Ireland meetings, sharing his story without excuses. I'm the villain in this story. I'm the person who betrayed family for money. Don't be me. His testimony was powerful precisely because it was honest. People heard themselves in his rationalizations and his descent into exploitation. He worked 2 jobs to pay Father Thomas back. It would take years, but he was committed. He went to therapy weekly, unpacking the desperation and entitlement that had led him to betray his uncle. And slowly, very slowly, he began to rebuild something. Not his old life. That was gone. But a new life built on honesty and service rather than exploitation and desperation. His children, now teenagers, slowly began talking to him again. I'll never forget what you did to great Uncle Tom, his son told him. But I'm watching you try to be better. That counts for something. 2 years after the abandonment, Father Thomas attended Liam's first anniversary celebration with Elder Advocacy Ireland. 1 year of service, Father Thomas announced to the small gathering. 1 year of Liam O'Brien helping families avoid the mistakes he made. 1 year of redemption earned, not just claimed. Liam stood before the group. 2 years ago, I abandoned my 81-year-old uncle at a care facility and stole from him. I was facing financial ruin and I chose the evil path. And it destroyed my life. But my uncle, Father Tom, gave me something I didn't deserve, a chance to be better. Not forgiveness without cost, but redemption through service. And I'm still working on it. I probably will be for the rest of my life. If you're here because you're tempted to exploit an elderly family member, I'm here to tell you, don't. It's not worth it. You'll lose everything that actually matters. And if you've already done it, I'm here to tell you, there is a path back. But it requires you to face what you did and spend your life making amends. The room was silent. That's redemption, Father Thomas said. Not erasure of the past, but transformation of the future. Father Thomas continued his work for 3 more years. He was 84 when his health began to fail, not his mind, but his body. The arthritis worsened. His heart was weakening. I'm dying, he told Margaret Walsh matter-of-factly. Probably have 6 months, maybe a year. I'm sorry, Father Tom. Don't be. I've had 84 good years. And the last 3, working with elder advocacy, helping people, seeing Liam transform, have been some of the best. I'm ready. What's your legacy? Not the 56 years of priesthood, though that mattered. My legacy is that I was betrayed, and I chose redemption over revenge. I was abandoned, and I chose to help others avoid abandonment. That's what I want to be remembered for. Father Thomas O'Brien died peacefully in his sleep on a Tuesday morning in May, with Liam sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. "Thank you," Liam whispered. "For everything. For forgiveness. For redemption. For showing me who I could be." Father Thomas's funeral was held at his old parish in Ballycastle. Hundreds attended, former parishioners, fellow priests, residents from nursing homes he'd ministered to, families he'd helped through Elder Advocacy Ireland. And front and center, Liam O'Brien, who gave the eulogy. "Father Thomas was abandoned by me, betrayed by family, stolen from. And he responded not with bitterness but with grace. He taught me, taught all of us, that people can change. That redemption is possible. That forgiveness isn't letting someone off the hook, it's giving them a chance to earn their way back. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the chance he gave me. And I encourage all of you, if someone has wronged you, consider giving them that chance. Not because they deserve it, but because redemption transforms both the forgiven and the forgiver." Father Tom once told me, "We're all in need of grace, and when we receive it, we have a duty to extend it to others." That's what he did for me. And that's what I'll try to do for others. As they lowered Father Thomas's casket into the ground, Royson Walsh, who'd continued covering his story, wrote one final article. "The Priest Who Forgave: How Father Thomas O'Brien Turned Betrayal into Redemption." The article detailed his journey from abandonment to freedom to becoming an advocate for the elderly. But it focused mostly on his relationship with Liam, how he'd chosen redemption over revenge. Father Thomas O'Brien was abandoned at 81, Royson wrote. He could have spent his final years bitter. Instead, he spent them building something beautiful, a pathway to redemption for those who'd wronged him and protection for those who were vulnerable. His return from abandonment touched everyone who knew him. Not because he was perfect, but because he chose grace. Elder Advocacy Ireland continued long after Father Thomas's death, helping hundreds of elderly people avoid exploitation. And at every meeting, they began with Father Tom's Creed. "We believe that every person, no matter their age, deserves dignity. That families should protect, not exploit. That when we are wronged, we can choose redemption over revenge. And that it's never too late to become who we should have been."